Welcome to Philadelphia. And good morning. My name is Walter McDougall, Professor of History and International Relations at the University of Pennsylvania, and the co-chair of the Madeleine and W.W. Keene Butcher History Institute. It's an honor and a privilege for me to be affiliated with this truly remarkable enterprise that must have been doing something very right over the past 22 years, because this weekend's event marks our 51st History Institute for secondary school teachers. Thank you. Clearly, we have found favor with donors, but especially with you, the dedicated, self-selected educators who fight the good fight on behalf of America's youth. Thank you for your calling. We live in an age of instant global communications, constant distractions from the internet, social media. Even your students who escape Facebook and Twitter long enough to follow the news of the world are likely to flit from one crisis du jour to the next without the time or the knowledge needed to gain any sober historical perspective on events. The purpose of the Butcher Institute here at FPRI is to provide that historical perspective by bringing you teachers together with panels of nationally renowned experts so that you might carry back to your classrooms not only the knowledge, but perhaps also the beginning of wisdom about the great issues of our time. If this is your first FPRI History Institute, I promise you an exhilarating 26 hours. You think I'm kidding. This is an intellectual high that will leave your head spinning. So let me acknowledge all those who have made this special weekend possible. Thanks, of course, to our all-star lineup of speakers. Thanks to FPRI's trustees, with a special shout-out to Robert Fox for his support. Thanks to Tally Helfont, director of our program on the Middle East. Thanks to our events coordinator, Rachel Asaro, for whom this institute is her baptism of fire. And thanks to our entire staff. Not least, I thank a person who has not only helped to plan and organize this institute, but who has served FPRI with loyalty, efficiency, good judgment, and unfailing good cheer since 1976. Our president, Alan Luxenberg.
In today's schedule, I am sandwiched in between Walter McDougall, from whom I've learned more than anyone else about American history and international relations, and between Adam Garfinkel, from whom I've learned the most about the Middle East. That's an honor. I know all of you have challenging jobs, but for some years I was a Hebrew school teacher, which meant that I taught middle and high school students on Sunday mornings when their friends were sleeping, and on Tuesday evenings when they've already had a full day of school. So don't tell me about challenging. One of the courses I taught was a course on the Israel-Palestine conflict. And I'll never forget the day when one of my brightest and most truculent students burst out saying, and I quote, "Everything I learned in public school is objective and everything I learned in Hebrew school is biased." I thought about that for a moment and replied, "Well, you're half right." Actually, I never felt she was referring to my class because my approach was to teach history and not advocate for a cause. Given how little time a student spends in Hebrew school, I never felt it was my responsibility so much to impart a vast body of knowledge, but to inspire them to want to learn and to help them learn how to learn. And history was the perfect backdrop because it is filled with irony, tragedy, complexity, and it's filled with stories. But my students' outbursts stayed with me, and as a result, I've always been vocal on the issue of advocacy in the classroom. It's simply counterproductive. Counterproductive from the point of view of the education of the student, and even counterproductive from the point of view of advocating a cause. So we have tried in this conference to give you a balance of perspectives. And by we, I mean Tally Helfont, as Walter said, the director of our Middle East program, Tally, and myself as we worked on this conference very closely together. That said, I have to confess some bias in developing the agenda for this conference. And that bias was best expressed in the words of Chaim Weizmann, Israel's first president, who described this conflict saying, "It's not a matter of right and wrong, it's a matter of two rights." Now, I can't speak for all of our speakers. I can't even speak for any of our speakers. I can't even speak for Tally. But in designing this conference, we may have given short shrift to what's called the one-state solution. And in my view, the two-state solution is like democracy. It's a terrible idea, but it's better than all the alternatives. Nonetheless, this weekend we have prepared for you will be rich in history, as well as in analysis of contemporary affairs. There will be multiple interpretations and perspectives, and disputation is welcome. But keep it civil, but not too civil. And now I'd like to introduce to you Adam Garfinkel, who got his start at the Foreign Policy Research Institute when he was a graduate student and maybe even an undergraduate at the University of Pennsylvania. He went on to serve on the U.S. Commission on National Security, 21st Century, and they issued a report, I remember, in April 2001, which, among other things, called for a vast expansion of measures to improve homeland security. No one paid attention to that report, and 5 months later, 9/11 happened, and homeland security was a common word. Adam went on to serve as the founding editor of the National Interest magazine, and then went on to serve as a speechwriter to Colin Powell, and then Condi Rice, and now is the founding editor and remains editor of the American Interest magazine, which is a great magazine, which I'm sure he'll bring out and show you a sample of. He also writes a blog on the American Interest website, which I read religiously, mostly about the Middle East, but occasionally about other issues. He's also written a number of books over the years. One is called Jew Centricity, which is about all of the blame and credit that people place on Jews that is not totally deserved. And another book on the Vietnam anti-war movement, which I remember reading in a single weekend. It was so gripping. And I'm told that it is the only social science book with the word God in the index. So anyway, please welcome Adam Garfinkel.